Hello, fellow souls with bodies, and welcome back to the What I've Learned of Magic podcast with me, your host, Morgan Rhodimer. Wow, it's already episode 2 of season 2, and I did see 222 earlier, so maybe that's a sign for somebody. Also, I got a purple haze latte at my local coffee shop, which has raspberry and I believe chocolate, which is delicious. But raspberry is a Venusian and water-ruled fruit. So maybe some hello. Maybe some of you are Pisces or Libras or are getting into love magic. But it's interesting because I was planning on this episode being about a phrase that I use a lot, which is tools before rules, or tools are greater than rules. And this is something that I kind of came up with when I was going from spiritual and philosophical, like very cerebral learning as far as my spirituality was concerned, to trying to ground it into the physical realm and into my human mortal life. I have a belief that we were incarnated here, whether reincarnated or incarnated for the first time. I believe we all came here with the limitations of being a human being on purpose. Because there's limitations to be. Sorry, my cat is playing with my foot. Are you cleaning my shoe? That's so nice. That's so nice. Because there are limitations to being human, but there's also celebrations of it as well. Things that our corporeal forms are able to experience that we can't if we are just some spirit in the spirit realm. I mean, think of like how ghosts try their hardest to become corporeal so that they can touch and interact with the environment, because when they are in their fully spiritual forms, that is far more difficult or impossible. So when it comes to tools before rules, it's something that I came up with not only for the spiritual side, but also the neurodivergent side of me. There's a lot of rules in our society and in life in general of like, you have to do it this way or it needs to be done this way, and nobody really explains why that's important, and that would bother me. And I realized it's not so much about these structures and tools ruling how I go about my life. It's about using them as tools. For example, astrology or tarot. They are not ruling you. They are not telling you what to do or how to do it. They're telling you what's happening. They're telling you this is a tool that you can use should you so choose. And if you don't want to, then, suffer the consequences. But same thing with tarot. It's not saying you have to do this or else. It's like, it's advice. It's a tool in your toolbox that you get to use. But I feel like we put a lot of our tools in this spiritual and witchcraft community on a pedestal, which is interesting because I was just talking about taking things off of a pedestal in the Pluto and Aquarius episode just before this. So clearly that is a theme of Pluto and Aquarius, is putting everything on the same playing level. No longer having such strong hierarchical structures. Even our sovereignty does not mean that we are better than other people. It just means that we are autonomous and able to have integrity in our actions and be in a position of leadership. And it's not the kind of leadership in which you are above other people. It is the kind of leadership in which you are the first to do something, and thus you are leading the way, or you are stronger in a certain aspect, and thus you are able to carry on where other people need rest. So, when it comes to tools before rules, there was, what did I put down? With the tarot especially, oh, that's what it was. I believe that we are all, as human beings, meant to be, even if you don't identify as a human, a person who is existing in a human passing form, we are meant to be developing personal, authentic relationships with our tools. For instance, I was doing tarot a lot on TikTok, doing a lot of readings, and I would kind of find myself getting the same cards over and over again, but they kept not meaning what the traditional meaning was. And so one night I finally just went through every single card with my guides, and I just kept asking them, like, okay, what do you want this one to mean? But it would be something like, if I would be shuffling my cards, and I'd ask, like, what are the cards that represent quick timing? What are the cards that represent slow timing? What are the cards that represent these kinds of people, etc.? Like people in my personal life. So if I saw those cards happening again and again, I could understand that even if my guides weren't presently talking about those people, that their energy was a part of the reading possibly, or that was a possibility, and I could go deeper into it and clarify that. And it's been the same with astrology. I feel like my entire spiritual journey now is looking at it from a scientific perspective, and I don't mean science as in like math and chemistry. I'm talking science as in the study of something with theory and hypotheses and conclusions. So I've been looking at it more from an experimental lens of like, is this actually true for me? And I think that's going to be really important going forward, especially with things like AI and the fall of the empire of capitalism, and the restructuring of it. There's going to be a lot of internal compass work that we're going to be having to go through as to, what direction do we want to go in, and does that really align with our soul's purpose? And we have these tools to help us, but it's difficult to know what the tools are saying to use specifically if you don't develop a personal relationship with them. I think a big part of my journey was learning discernment and intuition. It's not that I wasn't intuitive. In fact, all of us have the ability to tap into our intuition. It is not some like special trait that some people have and other people don't. It's just, I think the trait is not your intuition. It's whether or not you can tell the difference between what your intuition is and what your fear-based thinking or habitual thinking is. And sorry, my nose is a little stuffy. It's getting colder outside and I need to take more vitamins. Maybe that's a sign for some of you. But with discernment, there are a lot of people out there who understand that there's a type of person who does what we do, that goes in depth on our spiritual journeys, on our self-work journeys, and they know why we do it. They know that we want to be a better person, but it's because we have gone through terrible things before getting to this point, and we don't want to have to go through them again, and we don't want anyone else to either. But the problem is that people, when they know these things about you, they try to use them against you, and they're like, well, okay, people are going to tarot readings because they need advice, they need guidance, they need help, and I bet you that I can sell that help to the highest bidder, right? And that's what's always bothered me. Like, I love being able to help people one on one, and I do deserve to be paid for those services when it is that direct personal sense. But at the same time, I do also feel like a lot of other people, that's not why they're doing what they're doing. It's like, sure, we have to work within this capitalist system with as much integrity as possible, but they've thrown integrity entirely out the window. And so you would see these people online in the spiritual spaces taking advantage of people who need help, people who need guidance, people who feel alone and unseen and misunderstood and betrayed. And they use that against them just to take their money. And so I think going forward, it's very important that your personal compass is extremely strong and that you know the difference between your intuition and somebody trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And you're not going to be perfect at it. I'm still not perfect at it. Sometimes people are really good at being manipulative, but that's not your fault or my fault, right? It's the person who decided they wanted to take advantage of somebody with a good heart, right? But with the tools before rules, instead of using these tools to rule you, to control you, and instead of using the people, like me even, who use these tools to help you as rules, like, oh my gosh, well, Morgan said that this is this is what's gonna happen to me, and if I don't do it like this, dun dun dun. It's like, no, if your journey says otherwise, if your intuition says otherwise, then who gives a shit what I have to say? That's it. I am another human being, and I am doing my best to help you and to help myself, and I'm always going to come from a place of love, kindness, integrity, and accountability. But you always know your soul and your journey better than anybody else, and anyone who tries to tell you different is scamming you. So that's why I try to teach these tools so that you eventually can fly the coop. Like, I don't want you in my nest forever. I'm gonna kick you out at some point. But when it comes to tarot, what really helped me was coming up with my own questions that mattered to me and asking my guides to fill in the blank rather than looking it up online or seeing how one of my favorite readers interprets a card. Sure, that can be inspiring, but is that how your personal guides want to talk to you? And it depends what guides you work with, right? I only recently started working with my ancestors, but I know some people who that's the only people they work with. And some people work with pagan deities, some people work with archetypes and energies, some people work with their higher self, some people work with all of the above and they switch back and forth, but you have to state who you're talking to before you do the shuffling so that you know their communication style. It's kind of like talking to somebody who speaks multiple languages. You have to allow for some form of mistranslation. Or if you understand, like, hey, like, this ancestor used to speak French, so the French would look at this card a little differently than, say, your Chinese ancestor or your Native American ancestor. There's and like they're all speaking different languages, they're all coming from different cultures and different energetic signatures, so knowing what each of them prefers and working with them personally. Also, it is November 30th and it is 3:03 p.m. So 222 earlier and now 333, and 222 is about, well, for me and my guides, 222 tends to represent intuition, following your intuition, but also partnerships, coming into like more than one mind working on something. And then 303 is very similar in that aspect of two creatives coming together, with a lot of potential involved. So that's pretty cool. Maybe that's coming in for you guys. Maybe this is a sign. But yeah, it's that, and that's another thing is 333, and the number 3 is my life path number. So I have a different personal experience with the number 3 than somebody whose life path number is 2 or 5 or 4, right? Or 7, whatever. We all have our own personal signatures. I've also started to pay less attention to, well, not completely, obviously, but to the 222333, and instead looking for things like my birthday. My birthday's 5/22. So if I see 5/22, that feels more personal than seeing 11/11. And seeing just certain numbers that relate to specific dates that are important to me, or that remind me of, or that like match like the price on my receipt or something. There needs to be some personal significance so that these tools are actually communicating with me and my life and my purpose, rather than I'm following along with the rules that other people have created based off of their life and their purpose. It can inspire, it can make you go, that's interesting. I'd like to see how that works for me. But it shouldn't rule you. And there was an interesting... Hold on. Yes, okay. So another thing, like I said, I came up with this phrase for myself as one of my mottos, amongst things like learn better, do better, tools before rules, and then I think it was systems before routines. But with tools before rules, one of the things was when I was looking into holistic styling, because I'm very into creative expression through makeup and fashion and even how you decorate your house and things. And there are a lot of rules that we as a society, as humans, have come up with that are like, you have to dress like this and you have to do it like this, and these are these systems. And the only thing is that I did find merit to them at first, and in general I still do. When I was getting into things like fashion, I was getting into things like seasonal color analysis and Kibbe body types and Kitchener essences. I even did, if you've ever heard of it, there's a beauty influencer called Dear Peachy, and she has a lot of interesting like tests you can do online to understand like your face shape. And I looked at all of this from two perspectives. One, as someone who's done graphic design, and two, as well, I guess three different, because there was the graphic design side of me, there was the I like to have fun and creatively express myself side of me, and then there was the spiritual side of me. Because I was trying to traverse the land of fashion and beauty while still keeping my soul intact. And as I previously discussed in the Pluto and Aquarius video, when Pluto was in Capricorn, it was more about hierarchy and giving a pedestal to structures rather than to the people within them. And things like fashion and beauty, it was meant to put the clothing or put the makeup or put the artistry on a pedestal rather than the artist or the muse or the model. It was less about celebrating what we come here to Earth with naturally, and instead celebrating what we create and put on our bodies. And there is some merit to like, oh yes, that couture piece is just absolutely beautiful. But when you're looking at it from a spiritual perspective, it's like, yes, that couture piece is beautiful, but is it honoring a natural human form? Or is it honoring the destruction of said human form and the destruction of confidence and the destruction of the love of humanity. Because there are a lot of things in fashion that are not just against the natural human form, but are also against the love of Mother Earth with how much waste that industry creates. So I had to take all of the things that I learned from a spiritual perspective and apply it to quote unquote mundane things. And that's why one of my other favorite things is mundane magic. But it's the tools in your life. And you have to look at things like your clothes and your makeup, and if you don't wear makeup, things like your body wash or how you do your hair, or just like your accessories, even your sunglasses. You have to look at all of those things as serving you rather than you serving them, and using them as a tool in your toolbox. I can switch between glasses and contacts, and sometimes I like to wear my glasses as a fashion statement. I do actually need them, but also sometimes I like to wear them because it helps my eyes rest at the end of the night. So there's also a practical use. I'm not a slave to my fashion. The fashion is meant to serve and enhance me and help me feel confident about how I show up in certain spaces. And that's going to be different for everybody. So this is just like an example, but there's, you have your fashion, and then you have your tarot, and then you have your astrology. And I think in this new paradigm, we really need to be making sure that those things are helping us and serving us instead of telling us what to do and how to be. And yeah, like astrology, for instance. I love astrology, but if there is a transit upcoming, let's say, for instance, the new moon in Sagittarius is happening tomorrow. I think the moon has entered Sagittarius, but it's not going to be exactly conjunct the sun until tomorrow. Now, I could be like, oh my god, there's a new moon in Sagittarius. That's my first house. I need to take this really seriously, and I need to make sure that I set intentions or else I'm gonna miss out. And I could totally stress about that. Or I could just be like, if I have time and it feels aligned with what I want to do and the goals that I'm setting, like if I need to write them down, if I feel inspired to recreate my vision board, if I feel inspired to finally get bangs, which is getting more and more tempting the closer we get to the Sagittarius new moon, I can do those things, and I can let them signify a new start for my first house. And the first house is like what you look like. So if I'm deciding to change up my look, that would be a good time, but I don't have to. Sometimes I can just go with the flow, and then I'm accidentally in that energy. It doesn't rule you. It is just the weather report. It is just telling you, hey, there are energies that are going to be influencing you thinking about how you come across other people, especially in your physical form. Do with that what you will. It doesn't mean you better do something to your appearance or else you have missed your chance to have a glow up. It's that's not how that works. It's just letting you know that there is energy there to utilize should you so choose. But you do not have to. You never have to do anything. It is up to you, your values, your preferences, which is why discernment is going to be so important, and having your own internal compass is so important. That's why I don't know if I've talked about it on here. I think I mentioned it in 1 or 2 episodes, but a tool that I created for myself and thus was able to also share with you guys was the Blank Page Strategy Journal. And I genuinely can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but the Blank Page Strategy was just my way of explaining to people what it's like to start from scratch in your spiritual awakening, where you are removing everything you think you know about yourself down to ground zero, which I guess technically is very similar to what we're doing with this Pluto moving into Aquarius, is we're having to enter a paradigm with zero understanding. And even if we do have the right understanding, we have to tell ourselves we don't, so that we can learn from experience and then recalibrate from there. But it's a tool. You don't have to use it. It's just there to help you. And it takes you through what I went through over and over again on my spiritual journey, going from I don't know who I am, but I know that these are the things I don't want in my life, so I have to cleanse those. And then now I have nothing, and that is terrifying, and having to stop myself from filling in the blank too soon out of a pressure to just have something there as an answer. Oh, which is interesting, because we started off this whole reading with me talking about raspberry and that being a Venusian energy and love. So a really good example of tools when it comes to searching for love is not filling in the empty space in your life just because it's uncomfortable and just filling it in with the first person you find. It's like, if they don't fit your standards or your dream or your expectations, really question that. Really decide, like, is this person for me? Am I okay with these things, or am I just settling? Right? So, never settle. But never settle, never surrender, except surrender is like a huge part of spirituality, so you can't avoid that, whether you want to or not. But anyways, these are tools that are meant to help you, and they are helpful. I mean, tarot has helped me. I described it, actually, I don't know if I had described this to you guys yet, like, not even just in the podcast, but on social media. I might have just written it for myself. I have, like, random notes everywhere that I'm like, I'll eventually share that. Hence the podcast. But one of the things that I realized with the tarot, I described the tarot, sorry, I lost my train of thought, and I was like, where was I going with that? I described it in my notes as helping me discern. I would have these intuitive nudges about people or situations, and I would question myself because I wouldn't have the kind of physical evidence that I could point to. I would just have, well, these psychic knowings, I suppose, about people, and I would be like, I don't know, I just don't like this person. And people would be like, you just met them, how are you already judging them? And I'm like, listen, I am not a judgy person. People tell me stuff all the time, and I'm like, fascinating. If I don't like somebody off the bat, if I feel weird vibes about them, I don't question it anymore, because I've never been wrong. But I can give myself evidence of that, where I can go back and where I'm not only not wrong, but my cards repeating exactly what I was thinking. And not in like a biased, you could twist that card that way. I mean legit, like, is this person trustworthy? And they give me the Seven of Swords, which means like, no. It's very helpful in that regard, because it's like, sometimes I don't want to believe it either. Sometimes, like, I don't trust this person, but I feel like I should, because they're always kind to me, or they've always done things for me, or I don't want to have to lose somebody again. And so it makes it to where my ego just like wants to hold on to this person, and I will pull cards about them, like, listen, like, help me out here. Maybe I'm just being paranoid or whatever, or like, maybe I'm sabotaging something that's really good because I'm scared. So like, please, like, help me out. And that's where the cards are tools. And if they are repeating what you are already feeling, then that can be confirmation. And then if they are not, if they are saying, you know what, like, put your fears to rest, you're fine, like, then you can do some shadow work and you can go, okay, well, why do I feel this way? And do I trust that the cards are, like, telling me the truth? And, like, you can even pull them several times if you want to. That's okay. Like, you can reshuffle and keep getting answers. But the thing is, I've done that before when my ego didn't want to hear what they had to say. But that's why I would write things down, so that after the thing came true or after the thing didn't happen, I could be like, see, they tried to warn you and you didn't want to listen, and here is your evidence. You wrote it down. But that's the thing, is like, you don't, in my opinion, my humble opinion, spirituality is not meant to be like structured religions that exist nowadays. It's 3, 2, 1 on the clock. It is not about having rules telling you what to do. It is not about having blind faith, right? Think of a person that you just meet this stranger and they tell you that you should trust them. Listen, you can if you want to, but it's completely understandable if you don't. You don't know who that person is. They have not earned that trust, right? So it is okay to have a little bit of a, I don't know if that's a wise idea to trust this random stranger. But then there's also the intuitive side of you that can be like, no, I can tell that this person is trustworthy. I don't know why, but I'm deciding to trust my intuition, which means I'm not trusting them, I'm trusting myself. And you get to learn if that is what your intuition feels like or not when you find out if they were trustworthy or not. But you learn through experience, right? So sometimes there isn't really an easy answer, but I think a better answer is making sure that you are not putting outside sources on a pedestal telling you what to do and how to do it, even though it makes life seem so much easier. It removes your power. It removes your autonomy. It removes your sovereignty. It allows other people to have control over you. And right now, as stressful and exhausting as it is a privilege to be able to suffer the consequences of your own actions rather than having to constantly suffer the consequences of other people's control over you. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about tools before rules. If anything is trying to tell you what to do, look at it from the perspective of, is this helpful? Can I make this a tool in my toolbox? Or is someone just trying to control me or manipulate me or take advantage of me? And let that help you lead the way with your discernment. And if you are in a place where you are learning discernment and you need help, I do have the Blank Page Strategy Workbook. It should be in my Linktree, which I will try to link on Spotify, but if not, it will be on the Linktree on my TikTok. I'm also working on some class ideas where I can help you learn how to use these tools with discernment so that you can personalize it. Like, I'll be there to help you as sort of like a sounding board, but otherwise making sure that you're kind of coming up with your own relationship with your tools, and I can guide you the way that I had to guide myself. So that's what I'm working on right now. And like I said, I am on TikTok and I'm on Bluesky. Both of them are morganrhodimer. I don't think I'm really gonna be on Instagram much longer. I've been trying to build a lemonade, so if you want to go on there, there's that too. But otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful time and space whenever and wherever you are.